I saw the menu sitting off to the edge of the reception counter. The corner of the paper stuck out from the glass surface, as if someone had pushed it aside and left it there. The white ceiling light cut a sharp line across the edge of the counter. I stopped exactly one step from the desk. Elena Brooks stood behind it. She looked up when my shoes touched the stone floor. Her eyes moved from the collar of my coat to the old phone in my hand. No greeting. I'd like to dine, I said. Just one. Elena opened the reservation book. Her hand froze halfway through the page when two white customers walked in behind me. Their footsteps were louder than the hum of the air conditioning. Tom Harris stepped out from the dining area. He looked at me for a single beat, then shifted his eyes to the two guests behind me. He took another menu from Elena's hand and walked around me without stopping. I need a table for one, I repeated. Tom answered quickly, still looking toward the people behind me. Just a moment. Elena closed the reservation book. The sharp thud of the cover on the glass was short and cold. Stay here, she said. I stayed still. Tom led the other two guests away. They passed under the white lights, their shadows stretching across the gray stone floor. I looked at the reception desk. Elena kept her eyes on the screen. Her hand rested on the counter, not reopening the book, not checking for available tables. Sarah Whitman. The evening manager appeared at the end of the hallway from the kitchen. She carried a stack of folded napkins. As she walked by, her eyes paused on me for one beat, then shifted away. I checked my watch. The minute hand moved slightly. The sounds in the restaurant were steady, chairs sliding, utensils touching plates, the air conditioning running. Do you have an open table? I asked Elena. Do you have a reservation? She said without looking up. No, I answered. Elena nodded lightly. It's busy tonight. Just wait a bit. Her voice was even, without emphasis. I said nothing more. The VIP door at the end of the lobby cracked open. Warm light spilled out in a thin strip across the floor. Riley Carter, the head of the VIP section, stood in the frame, looking into the lobby. His eyes paused on me before the door closed. I adjusted my coat collar. No one asked me anything else. A group of four entered. Tom returned to the desk and asked Elena, Still have a 4 top? Elena flipped to a page, stopped, then pointed at the screen. Tom walked away. No one looked in my direction. Sarah walked out again, holding a stack of receipts. She stopped for a beat near the kitchen, looked across the lobby. Her eyes touched mine once. Then she turned down another aisle. I stayed where I was. I stepped half a step forward to ask, but Elena raised her hand slightly, a short, straight motion. Stay there. I stopped. More chairs were scraped from deeper inside the dining room. The flow of staff and guests continued unchanged. The VIP door opened again. The warm light stretched farther this time. Riley stepped halfway out, hand on the door. His eyes followed toward the reception counter. Another VIP staff member behind him looked in the same direction. Riley closed the door again, slower than the previous 2 times. I looked at my reflection in the counter's glass. Standing straight, dark coat. The silhouettes of people walking behind me reduced to blurred streaks. Tom returned again. He glanced at me briefly, then changed direction. Elena kept looking at the screen. Sarah passed by once more with another stack of folded napkins. Her eyes stayed on me for a slightly longer beat, then moved on. Do you still have a table for one tonight? I asked. Elena looked up, her eyes shifting over my shoulder instead of to me. The guests behind you need a 4 top. I didn't move. Another group entered the restaurant. A gust of air from the street pushed my coat lightly. Tom went straight to greet them as the automatic door opened. I stood at the reception desk of a restaurant inside the company I oversee. No one asked what I needed. No one checked for single diner availability. No one checked the open tables. I looked directly at the counter's glass surface. The white light reflected in a clean line cutting across it. The VIP door opened a 3rd time. Riley stepped all the way out, holding the door open longer. The warm light spread wider across the stone floor. Another staff member behind him looked toward the reception desk with focused attention. Both of them closed the door together. Neither walked toward me. I stayed where I was. At the far end of the lobby, the automatic glass doors opened. A tall figure walked in. Dark gray shirt, holding a thin folder. Daniel Lee, the company's chief operating officer. He took a few steps, then stopped, still some distance from me. I saw his eyes move to the reception desk, then to the place where I stood. He held still for exactly 1 second, saying nothing. None of the staff noticed him. Daniel changed direction, walking toward the hallway on the left leading to the meeting rooms. His footsteps faded, then disappeared as the hall door closed. The lobby returned to its usual rhythm. Elena at the screen. Tom is guiding new guests. Sarah is walking by with receipts. No one approached me. I took a slow breath. I still had no table. No one had asked me a second question, and the entire system kept operating as if I were not standing there, in the middle of a restaurant owned by the company under my name. I was still standing at the reception counter when the door to the left hallway opened again. The metal handle gave off a soft click, and then Daniel Lee appeared once more. He walked slowly, holding the thin folder close to his side. The white ceiling lights caught the edge of the cover, forming a narrow streak of brightness. Elena did not look up. Tom was still guiding new guests deeper into the dining area. Sarah came out of the kitchen carrying another stack of receipts. Daniel walked straight toward the counter. I heard his footsteps more clearly than any other sound in the lobby. When he got close, Elena finally lifted her head. Her expression shifted for one brief beat. "Do you need anything?" Daniel asked me. His voice was low, steady, unhurried. I said, "I'm waiting for a table for one." Elena glanced quickly at Daniel, then back at the screen. "It's very busy tonight," she said. "Walk-ins have to wait." Daniel didn't answer. He stood beside me, eyes fixed on the part of the screen Elena was viewing. "I want to see the available tables," Daniel said, his voice still even. Elena tightened her grip on the reservation book. I saw her fingers hold the corner for a moment before she opened it. She turned to one page, not the one before it. "No openings," Elena said. "I already checked." Daniel tilted his head slightly, eyes on the page. "Let me see." Elena pushed the book forward by half a step. I saw several empty lines near the bottom of the page. Daniel tapped one of the blank sections with a single finger. Once, short. "Table 7 doesn't have anyone assigned," Daniel said. Elena paused. "I thought the party of 4 was supposed to take that one." "They're seated at table 10, Daniel said, still looking at the page. Sarah stood at a deliberate distance from the counter, but I saw her slow her pace and turn toward us. Tom returned to the counter just as Daniel placed his hand on the edge of the book and turned to the next page. "I saw 2 more unassigned tables listed there," Daniel said. "Check again." Elena opened the computer screen, her fingers hitting the keyboard with more force than before. The sound of the keys echoed clearly in the space between us. She looked at the screen and said, "Table 7 is open." Daniel said nothing. He looked directly at me. "Come with me," Daniel said. Elena opened her mouth as if to speak, but stopped. I saw her shoulders tighten for a beat, though her hands stayed on the keyboard. Daniel walked ahead. I followed him through the lobby. Sarah stepped aside as we passed. Tom stood still at the counter, gripping the cloth in his hand more tightly. I could see the tables in the main dining area clearly now. Most were filled, but table 7, near the glass wall, was completely open. The chairs were aligned, the cloth smooth, the utensils placed exactly where they should be. Daniel stopped beside the table. He set the folder down softly, the cover brushing against the tablecloth. "This table is for you." His voice was calm, without emphasis. I pulled the chair back. It slid across the floor with a short sound. I sat down. Daniel stood still for a moment. His eyes moved toward the counter, where Elena was still staring at her screen. I saw Tom return again, placing the cloth back into his apron pocket. "I'll check in later," Daniel said. He gave a small nod, then walked toward the hallway leading to the office area behind the VIP section. I looked through the glass wall. Outside was the street. Headlights passed in short streaks. Another server, one I hadn't seen earlier, approached my table. A man in a black uniform, his name tag reading Mark Owen. He stood at a respectful distance, holding an order pad. "What would you like to start with?" he asked. His voice was steady, but not in the same rhythm as Tom's. I'll look at the menu first, I said. Mark nodded slightly and placed the menu on the table. I opened the first page. Thick paper, clean print, no creases. Mark stood half a step behind me, the exact professional distance, not crowding, not too close. At the reception counter, Elena looked toward my table more often now. Each glance lasted only a brief beat before she returned to the screen. Sarah stood beside Tom, speaking softly. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw Tom tighten the cloth again. The VIP door opened. Riley Carter stepped out and scanned the dining area. He saw Daniel standing at the end of the hallway, and their eyes met for a single second. Riley adjusted his tie and walked toward the counter. Mark spoke quietly behind me. When you're ready, I'll be right here. I set the menu down. I'm ready to order. Mark stepped forward on cue, his order pad open. I ordered a few simple items. When he left, I looked back toward the reception desk. Tom stood still. Sarah remained beside him. Riley was speaking to Elena, his hand resting on the edge of the counter for one slow beat. Daniel had not left the hallway. He stood at the point where the main area met the VIP corridor, folder in hand, eyes fixed on the staff group. No one raised their voice. No one showed any strong expression, only small pauses, the precise moments when the atmosphere of the restaurant shifted. I sat in silence. The scent of pepper, the clink of a water glass at the next table, the steady air conditioning, everything blended into an even background. I looked around. No one ignored me now. No one walked past me the way they had at the start, but the air held a thin tension, as if something was about to be set back into its rightful place. In the distance, Daniel took a step out of the hallway, his eyes still on the staff. I heard his footsteps more clearly than anything else. I was sitting at table 7 when the hallway door opened again. Daniel stepped out first, the folder still in his hand. The white lights reflected off the cover in a sharp streak. Elena walked behind him, her hands clasped together. Tom stood next to Sarah, his eyes lowered to the stone floor. The air in the lobby shifted with each step they took toward the reception counter. Daniel placed the folder on the counter. The sound of the cover hitting the glass was short and firm. We have a serious issue with tonight's process, Daniel said. His voice was low, steady, neither raised nor lowered. Elena glanced at me for a brief beat, then looked down again. Tom kept both hands at his sides. Sarah didn't move. Daniel turned the computer screen toward himself. He flipped a page in the reservation book. I found 3 open tables that were ignored. One of them was meant for an important guest. Daniel said each word with a slightly slower cadence. I saw Elena's shoulders tighten. Tom pressed his fingers together. Sarah straightened just a little. Daniel continued. And that important guest, he looked at me, then looked directly at the 3 people at the counter, is the CEO of this company. Elena lifted her head. Tom stood upright. Sarah looked directly at me for the first time tonight. I didn't say anything. I simply looked back at them. Daniel went on. This is Marcus Hales. I saw Tom's expression shift in a single beat. Elena opened her mouth but couldn't form a word. Sarah took in a quiet breath. Daniel placed his hand on the folder. Because of a major failure in guest handling tonight, Elena and Tom are suspended for 30 days. After that, their positions will be reviewed. Elena tightened her clasped hands. Tom lowered his eyes again. Daniel turned to Sarah. You received a high-level warning for missing your oversight during the busiest hour. Sarah nodded lightly, with no further reaction. Daniel continued. I'm appointing Riley as the acting supervisor of the reception area. Effective immediately. Riley stepped forward half a step. He didn't speak, but I saw his posture settle more firmly. Daniel then turned toward Mark, the server who had handled everything correctly. Mark is promoted to lead server for the evening shift. Effective now, with the corresponding raise. Mark bowed his head slightly, his hand resting on the edge of his order pad. I understand, he said quietly but clearly. Daniel looked at me. I'm sorry, Marcus. I nodded. Daniel continued, now speaking to the entire team. Mr. Hales built this system, and tonight he was treated as if he wasn't here. No one responded. Tonight, Daniel said, I'll rewrite the entire walk-in guest protocol for every branch. Starting tomorrow, every staff member will go through a service standards review. Elena looked down. Tom stayed still. Sarah kept her eyes on Daniel. Daniel closed the folder, his hand resting on the cover for exactly 1 second before pulling it back. "Thank you for your patience," Daniel said to me. "I'll make sure this doesn't happen again." "I wasn't being patient," I said. "I was just standing there." Daniel held silent for a second. I saw something shift in his eyes. Not strongly, but enough to show he understood what I meant. Riley stepped toward my table. "Do you need anything else?" His voice was steady, more in line with proper service than earlier. "I'm finished," I said. Mark appeared a beat later, clearing the table with precise, efficient movements. Nothing extra. Nothing slow. I stood up. No one walked around me the way they had before. No one avoided my eyes. No one looked past me to spot another guest. I walked past the reception counter. Elena bowed her head slightly. Tom stood upright. Sarah stepped aside to make space. Daniel didn't say anything else. He simply watched as I moved toward the glass doors. I pushed the door open. The street air swept in, cold and clear, and as I stepped out of Orem Prime, I thought, sometimes being overlooked just once is enough to make an entire system realign itself. If this story reminds you of a moment you endured in silence, you can leave a line. Not to make noise, but so anyone who's lived through the same thing will know they weren't standing alone. If you want to follow stories like this, you're welcome to stay. I'll keep telling them, one at a time. The way people who've grown past the noise prefer to hear them, slowly, clearly, and without showmanship.